When I got the flyer, I thought it was a prank. It wasn't posted in a normal spot like a bulletin board or tucked in a newspaper. It was taped to my apartment door, dead center, like it had been waiting for me. Red and gold lettering on textured parchment that looked too expensive for a regular traveling show. It read, "Join Cirque Nocturne. Hiring immediately, room, board, and generous pay included. For those who crave the extraordinary." At the bottom, just an address. No phone number, no website. Normally, I would have laughed and tossed it in the trash, but I was 2 months behind on rent, had exactly $13.22 in my bank account, and no family left to ask for help. Desperation has a way of making even the strange seem reasonable. The address led me to the edge of town, just past the railroad tracks and down an overgrown path I didn't even know existed. There, tucked between tall trees and fog that clung unnaturally low to the ground, was the circus. Not a tent, mind you. This was an entire encampment, sprawling and impossibly massive for something I'd never heard of. Lanterns hung from poles that hadn't been installed by human hands. The colors were impossibly vivid in the moonlight, deep purples, glittering golds, and silvers that shimmered like starlight. And then there was the music. It was faint, like a whisper curling through the trees, but it tugged at something in me, something old and buried. I walked through the gates before I even realized my feet were moving. The man who greeted me didn't speak at first. He just handed me a sealed envelope and gestured for me to follow. He was tall, dressed in a velvet red suit with slick black hair and a face that looked carved from marble. His smile didn't reach his eyes. The envelope had my name already written on it. Inside were 5 things: a contract with no end date, a crimson key with an intricate spiral handle, a stitched patch that read CREW, a small brass token with an eye engraved on one side, a single sheet of parchment titled Rules of Conduct for All Non-Performers. I read it as we walked past silent tents and cages that seemed too quiet. The rules, as written: never speak to the performers unless they speak to you first. Do not, under any circumstances, enter the striped tent after midnight. If a performer offers you something to eat or drink, politely refuse. Ignore any crying you hear from inside the mirror tent. It is not real. If you see a clown with no face, walk backward until it disappears. Do not run. You must leave the grounds before the final bell. If you hear a second bell, run. I stopped walking somewhere around rule number 4. The man turned to look at me. "Still interested?" he asked, as if he already knew the answer. I don't know why I said yes. Maybe it was the smell of caramel and smoke in the air. Maybe it was the way the stars seemed brighter above the circus grounds. Or maybe it was the voice in the back of my mind whispering, "You don't belong anywhere else." He handed me a uniform and showed me to my trailer. It was already stocked with food, water, and clothes in my size. There was even a small card on the pillow. "Welcome to the family. M." That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because of the unfamiliar bed or the wind rattling outside, but because of the music. It was still playing, soft and slow, like a lullaby with too many notes out of tune. And every so often, I could hear something underneath it. Laughter, not joyful, not human. I stared at the rules again, reading each line over and over, especially Rule 6. If you hear a second bell, run. What the hell kind of circus needed rules like these? I should have left then, but I didn't. The next evening, just after sunset, I reported to the operations tent, a large black pavilion with seams that shimmered like oil in the light. Inside were shelves of strange tools and equipment I didn't recognize, racks of uniforms, and clipboards that filled themselves out when you signed your name. I was assigned to general maintenance, sweeping paths, refilling lantern oil, checking locks. Basic stuff. But before I could get started, the man in the velvet suit, who I now knew was called Mr. Mercier, pulled me aside. He handed me a smaller, crumpled note, this one handwritten in red ink and far more urgent in tone. Crew reminder: performers are not people. They will look like people. They will talk like people. They are not. Maintain eye contact only if you must. Never accept their gifts. If one offers to trade places with you, run. I didn't know whether to laugh or be terrified. The first few hours passed uneventfully. The circus had started to stir. Vendors setting up, lights warm into life, performers stretching or practicing movements I couldn't follow. My job was mostly behind the scenes. Guests hadn't arrived yet, and I wasn't allowed near the audience areas anyway. A giant sign behind the operations tent made that very clear. Crew, stay behind the curtain. Do not watch the show. Another rule. Another warning dressed as instruction. At one point, I passed a tent where a contortionist was practicing. She twisted herself into knots that seemed anatomically impossible. Her limbs bent backward, her spine rippled like water, and her head turned full circle to look at me. I tried to pretend I hadn't seen it. She grinned. Not just smiled, grinned. Wide, toothy, too wide for a human mouth. She waved with a hand that had too many fingers. "Want to see something wonderful?" she asked. I remembered rule number 1. Do not speak unless spoken to. But she had spoken first. Did that mean? I hesitated but shook my head and kept walking. Her smile never faded. Later, I passed the mirror tent, the one mentioned in rule number 4. It stood in the dead center of the grounds, shimmering like glass under a storm cloud. The mirrors on the outside were tall and curved like warped funhouse panels, each one slightly out of sync with the others. As I walked by, I heard it. A sob. Faint. Choked. The kind of crying you'd associate with a child lost in a mall. It wasn't loud, but it pierced me. "Help me," the voice whispered. "Please, someone's in here." I stopped. The sobbing grew louder, and now I could see movement in the reflection. Something reaching out from the inside, fingers brushing against the glass. I stepped closer, and then rule number 4 slapped into my brain like a hammer. Ignore any crying you hear from inside the mirror tent. It is not real. I took a step back, then 2 more. The voice changed. "Coward," it said now, lower, rougher. "You won't always have the rules to protect you." The crying stopped instantly. I didn't realize I'd been holding my breath until I let it go and nearly collapsed. By the time the first bell rang at 2 a.m., I was rattled but still standing. The bell was deep and old, like something pulled from the belly of a cathedral. Its toll echoed through the trees and rattled the stakes of every tent. It marked the end of the show, the beginning of cleanup. I returned to the path behind the striped tent, the one I wasn't supposed to enter after midnight, just in time to see the strong man emerging from it. Only he wasn't right. His eyes were black pits. His body seemed bigger than before, too big for his own skin, like something had inflated inside him. His jaw unhinged when he yawned, actually unhinged, with tendons stretching and snapping audibly. When he saw me, he smiled like an actor spotting a friend backstage. "You're new," he said. His voice was syrup thick, slow, and sticky. "You'll like it here. We all do, eventually." He raised a hand in greeting and stepped past me, humming to himself. I didn't breathe until he was out of sight. And then the music stopped. The lanterns flickered. The air turned cold. A second bell rang. Not far, not faint, and not scheduled. It was soft, almost beautiful. Wrong. I didn't wait. I ran. Didn't check if anyone else heard it. Didn't care. The second bell meant something had changed. Something was awake. I didn't sleep that morning. Not because I didn't try. I lay in the cot inside my trailer, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint hum of distant calliope music that never seemed to fully die down, even after the guests were long gone. My hands wouldn't stop shaking, and the second bell echoed in my mind like a memory I wasn't supposed to have. None of the other crew members mentioned it at breakfast. In fact, no one mentioned anything from the night before. They ate in silence, their eyes hollow, their faces pale. Some looked like they hadn't slept in days. One man just sat there stirring cold oatmeal for 30 minutes, never once lifting the spoon to his mouth. I wanted to ask. I wanted to scream. Did you hear it, too? The second bell? What does it mean? But something told me I wouldn't like the answer. Or worse, maybe they didn't remember it at all. Later that afternoon, I found a note pinned to my trailer door. No envelope this time, just a single slip of folded paper with red ink. Tonight, the mime may try to speak. He is not allowed to speak. If he does, do not listen. Block your ears and flee. M. Another warning disguised as instruction. Another rule without explanation. That evening, the circus pulsed with life again. Guests flooded in like moths to flame, drawn by lights that weren't entirely electric. The smell of roasted almonds and burnt sugar filled the air, thick with smoke and something metallic underneath. I was tasked with monitoring the rear perimeter. An easy gig, or so I thought. Just keep an eye on the fence line. Make sure no guests wandered past the bounds of the show. The problem started around midnight. I was walking the outer loop near the Hall of Mirrors, keeping my head down, when I saw something up ahead. Movement, too smooth to be normal. At first, I thought it was a performer headed back from their act. But as I got closer, I noticed something wrong. It was a clown. Classic red and white makeup, oversized shoes, floppy purple hat. But no face. Where its features should have been, there was smooth, pale skin. No eyes, no nose, no mouth. Just a blank canvas of flesh, as if someone had painted a human outline and forgot the details. It tilted its head at me, curious. I froze. Rule number 5 came slamming into my brain like an alarm. If you see a clown with no face, walk backward until it disappears. Do not run. Every instinct screamed to turn and bolt, but I forced myself to stay still. I took one slow step backward, then another. The clown mimicked me, stepping forward each time I stepped back, keeping the exact same distance between us. Its shoulders slumped like a marionette, its limbs rubbery and slow, like it hadn't figured out how to move like a person yet. I kept backing up, step by step by step. The clown paused, then raised a hand, curling one long gloved finger to point at its own featureless face, where a mouth should have been. The flesh began to ripple, stretch, split. A line formed across the lower half of its face, too wide, too long, and slowly peeled open into something resembling a grin. But it wasn't a mouth. It was just more skin, folding back and back and back until it looked like a gaping maw made of nothing. It made no sound. It just pulsed, and then it waved. I stepped back one last time and blinked. It was gone. Just gone. No vanishing smoke, no puff of glitter, no shriek, just silence. I stood there, trembling, barely able to breathe. My knees locked. My heart felt like it was trying to claw its way out of my chest. Behind me, somewhere deep in the circus, a performer's laughter broke the silence, high-pitched, unnatural, and much too close. I turned around, and there he was, the mime, dressed in black and white, standing at the edge of the path, hands pressed together as if in prayer. His head tilted, expression mournful. I watched him closely, remembering the note. The mime was not supposed to speak. He opened his mouth, number hound, clapped my hands over my ears just as his lips moved. I didn't hear what he said, not really, but I felt it. It wasn't sound. It was something heavier, like gravity, like guilt, like all the things you try to bury under smiles and busy work. His voice, whatever it was, reached inside. I turned and ran, even though I wasn't supposed to, even though the rules were clear, because this time the rules weren't enough. By the fourth night, I realized something awful. The rules didn't keep you safe. They just told you which flavor of death to avoid. Break one, and you'd bleed. Obey them, and you might still bleed. Just slower. Just enough to make you think you're still okay. That night, my job changed. Mr. Mercier handed me a new card. It wasn't red or gold this time. It was bone white, with my name etched into it like it had been scratched with a claw. Assignment: mirror tent perimeter, midnight to 4 a.m. Do not look into the mirrors. My stomach dropped. I tried to protest, but he cut me off with a single look. There's no rotation this week, he said, eyes like shards of obsidian. You've already been noticed. Noticed? The word sat like ice in my throat. I clocked in, walked past the striped tent with its slowly swaying curtains, and made my way to the center of the grounds. The mirror tent was larger than I remembered, like it had grown since my first night. Its reflective surface didn't show me, not properly. My reflection was a second behind, slightly off, blinking when I didn't, tilting its head when I stood still. I swallowed hard and circled the perimeter. At first, it was quiet. The wind had died. No laughter, no carnival sounds, just my footsteps on the damp grass and the soft hum of energy coming off the tent like static. I focused on my breathing, counted my steps, avoided every direct glance at the panels. That worked for about 20 minutes, and then came the voice. "Help me." Soft, fragile, a child's voice. I froze. Rule number 4. Ignore any crying you hear from inside the mirror tent. It is not real. The voice came again, closer. "Please, someone, anyone." I turned my head, just a little. One of the mirror panels was cracked. Hairline fractures spiderwebbed across the glass as though something had punched from the inside. Through the broken pieces, I saw movement. Small hands pressed against the glass, fingers twitching. "Please," the voice sobbed. "It hurts in here. It hurts so bad." I stepped forward without meaning to. Just a little. Just to see. Just to understand. And that's when I caught it. My own face in the mirror, staring back at me. But it wasn't copying me. It was crying. Its lips moved, whispering something I couldn't hear. I reached toward the glass. The reflection didn't. Instead, it smiled. Too wide, too knowing. I snapped my hand back like I'd touched a stove. The reflection kept smiling. Then it leaned in until its forehead was pressed against the inside of the mirror. My own reflection, pressing in from another side. It whispered again, and this time I heard it. "You're already inside." The mirror cracked further. The glass didn't shatter outward. It breathed outward, like something was pushing through, like the membrane between this world and the next was beginning to give. I stumbled back. From inside the tent came a sudden clang, metal on metal, like a chain being yanked tight. A hiss followed, wet and low, and the reflection snapped back to normal. My face, normal, scared, sweating, real. I turned to run, and that's when I saw them. 5 figures standing just outside the tent, dressed like performers but with skin the color of ash and eyes that glowed like candle wicks in the dark. They didn't speak, they didn't move, they just stood there, watching me. One of them raised a hand and slowly tapped their own reflection in a mirror beside them. Tap, tap, tap. And in the reflection, my own head turned. But I didn't move. The real me stood frozen. The reflected me looked toward them, smiled, and took a step toward the glass. I ran. Didn't care about rules, didn't care about the schedule. I ran until I reached the far end of the grounds, near the carousel that hadn't spun once since I arrived. I collapsed behind a barrel, chest heaving. Somewhere behind me, I heard it again. The second bell. It wasn't even subtle this time. The air changed with it, turned damp, heavy, electric. My fingers trembled as I clutched the assignment card in my pocket. The letters were fading. My name disappearing like it had never been there at all. That night, the circus didn't want me watching. It wanted me inside. I didn't report to the ops tent the next evening. I stayed in my trailer, lights off, curtains drawn, clutching the brass token they gave me on my first night. The one with the I etched on one side. I didn't know what it was for, but somehow it felt important now. Like a ward, maybe, or a brand. I was too afraid to test which. Someone knocked at my door at exactly 10:33 p.m. Not a normal knock. 4 slow taps, then a pause, then 2 more. A pattern. I stayed silent, didn't move. After a minute, a voice called out softly, "Your shift is mandatory." I knew that voice. It was my own, not a recording, not someone mimicking it. It had the cadence, the edge, the way I slurred mandatory slightly when I was tired. It even sounded out of breath, like I was always just recovering from a run. "Come on," it whispered. "You don't want to make them come in." The doorknob turned, then clicked once, but didn't open. Eventually, the footsteps faded. The circus didn't like being refused, but apparently it respected rules, even unspoken ones. Around midnight, my trailer lights flickered. I opened the curtain just enough to see what I already felt. The circus had changed again. The tents were taller, the shadows were thicker, and the sky above wasn't a sky anymore. It was a spinning canvas of pale stars that shimmered like eyes, all blinking slowly in unison. The moon had vanished. The wind didn't move. Only the music still played, low and strange and hollow. I sat down, still holding the brass token, when I noticed something new under my cot. A slip of paper, smaller than the others. This one read, "Rule revision number 7. If a performer offers to trade places with you, refuse immediately. They are no longer bound. You are." I didn't remember a rule number 7, but that didn't matter, because 20 minutes later, I met her. She appeared outside my trailer without sound or warning, just standing in the misty space between the carousel and the ringmaster's tent. A girl in a tattered ballerina dress, makeup smudged down her cheeks like she'd been crying for decades. She was barefoot, her toes black with dirt, and her hands clutched a broken music box that played no tune. She looked up at me with wide, ancient eyes. "You don't belong here," she whispered. "I know," I said, my voice cracked. "I can help." She opened the music box, and a trickle of cold metallic mist spilled out, curling around her fingers. "I can take your place. Just give me the token." I tightened my grip around it without thinking. "No," I said, voice trembling. Her expression didn't change. "I was like you once. Crew, before the rules changed." "Changed? They always change, for the ones who stay too long." She stepped closer. "You think the rules are instructions," she said. "They're not. They're promises, and promises can be broken if someone trades their fate." She reached out, palm open. "Let me go home." The music box began to play again, faint and haunting. I recognized the tune. It was the same one I'd heard every night since I arrived. It wasn't a song. It was a lullaby. Mine, from childhood, something my mother used to hum when the lights flickered during storms. How do you know that?" I asked. She didn't answer, just stepped closer, the melody growing louder with every inch. I backed away until my shoulder hit the trailer door. The girl's eyes gleamed. Last chance. I raised the brass token, holding it like a shield. No trade. And just like that, she was gone. Not blinked out, not vanished in a puff. Just rewound, like reality reversed a few seconds and she had never been there. The music box dropped to the ground, still open, still playing. I didn't touch it. I didn't sleep either. At dawn, I stepped outside and found the circus exactly as it had been the first night. Perfect tents, golden banners, laughing children and parents buying candied apples from clowns with painted smiles. The performers waved to the guests. The guests waved back, but none of them waved at me, not even once. That's when I realized something horrible. They couldn't see me anymore. The next morning, I walked through the circus grounds like a ghost. Guests flowed around me like water, eyes glazed with wonder as they watched sword swallowers and fire dancers, marveled at the glass animals in the menagerie, and laughed at jokes told in impossible languages by jesters with eyes that blinked sideways. But no one looked at me. No one bumped into me. When I tried to speak to a fellow crew member, Jonah, the lanky guy with a limp who'd helped me carry oil barrels my first night, he just walked past, expression blank, like I wasn't there. I went back to the operations tent. There were no clipboards, no sign-in sheets, no red velvet coat, no Mr. Mercier. Just a single piece of paper tacked to the inside of the entrance flap. If you've been forgotten, do not panic. Remain on the grounds until a place opens. No signature, no instructions on what a place meant. Just that chilling corporate tone, like being erased was a normal part of onboarding. That night, I wandered. I didn't know what else to do. I didn't have a shift. I didn't have a trailer. When I returned to where it had been, there was nothing but an open patch of grass. No tire marks, no indentations, like it had never been there at all. So I walked. I watched the tents ripple with unnatural wind. Watched trapeze artists float without wires. Watched a magician reach into a guest's chest, pull out a fluttering red bird, and release it into the sky. But none of it saw me. The performers didn't wave. The guests didn't cheer when I passed. And the music, it was louder now, and off, like it was being played backward underwater. Sometime around midnight, I found myself near the outer fence, a rusted, wrought iron barrier that wrapped the entire circus like a spine. I had never noticed it before, but now I couldn't look away. Something was on the other side. A forest, yes, but not any forest I'd seen. The trees were too tall, too thin, like bones wrapped in moss. The sky above them wasn't black. It was red. Not blood red, but old, faded velvet, like the inside of a coffin. And in the distance, something walked. It was massive, hunched, with too many legs. I blinked, and it was gone. A cold breeze swept through the grass. and that's when I saw the sign nailed to the inside of the fence post. Performers only beyond this point. Crew who pass this line are lost. I backed away immediately, but behind me, closer now, someone whispered, "It's already too late." I turned around and saw a boy, no older than 10, barefoot, wearing a faded ringmaster's jacket that dragged on the ground. His eyes were mismatched, one blue, one gold, and both glowed faintly. "I remember you," he said softly. "You're one of the ones who tried to follow the rules." I swallowed. "Tried?" He smiled, but not kindly. "They change once they know your name." He reached into his sleeve and pulled out a card. It was identical to my first one. White parchment, red ink. Only now the back bore a black spiral that seemed to twist even when I looked straight at it. "They moved your name," he said. "You've been reassigned." "To what?" I asked. "To Watcher." He handed me the card. I didn't want to take it, but my hand moved anyway. It was ice cold. "There are no shifts, no breaks, no end. You'll stand until someone trades places with you, until someone sees you and speaks your name." My mouth went dry. What if no one ever does? The boy shrugged. "Then you'll stay." He turned and vanished into the mist between tents, leaving only silence behind him. I looked down at the card again. Below the spiral, a new sentence had appeared. "Do not sleep. Do not eat. Do not move. They are watching you now." I dropped the card and ran, but everywhere I turned, every tent I passed, every shadow I crossed, there were eyes, in mirrors, in puddles, in the faces of stuffed animals in the prize booths. I wasn't invisible anymore, but I was no longer me either. Not to them. To them, I had become part of the circus. Not crew, not guest, not performer. Just a placeholder. The card wouldn't burn. I tried. After wandering for what felt like hours, between acts that looped endlessly and guests who never seemed to age, I reached a quiet corner behind the fortune teller's caravan. A low fire crackled in a rusted barrel, the only real warmth I'd felt in days. I threw the spiral-marked card into the flames. It hovered. Didn't fall, didn't catch. It just floated above the fire, trembling, then gently drifted back into my lap, unmarked, unsinged, and somehow heavier. That was when I heard the third bell. It wasn't like the first, which was deep and final. It wasn't like the second, which was faint and wrong. The third bell wasn't heard at all. It was felt, like a vibration in the bones, like the sound of the earth sighing. It made my teeth hurt. My vision dimmed at the edges. My limbs ached with a kind of exhaustion that felt older than time. And suddenly, everything stopped. The fire went out. The music halted mid-note. The tents around me froze, their flaps caught in unnatural stillness. Even the fog that curled between the blades of grass stood still, like someone had hit pause on the world. I was alone in a dead, dreaming circus. And then the spiral began to move, not just on the card, but in the air, all around me. The air warped, bending inward toward a single point behind the Hall of Mirrors. The spiral wasn't a drawing, it was a door. And now it was open. I don't remember walking. I just remember arriving. The entrance to the spiral room wasn't marked. It didn't need to be. My eyes burned just looking at it. A tent flap twisted in on itself, drawing me in like breath pulling through a straw. Inside was silence. Not quiet, not empty. True, screaming, suffocating silence. The floor was stitched leather, stitched in seams that pulsed with a heartbeat. The walls curved like a seashell, coated in symbols that crawled when I blinked. In the center of the room stood a single mirror, taller than me, shaped like a teardrop. and so black it devoured light. I stepped forward against every instinct. My reflection appeared, but it wasn't moving like me. It stood there, blinking slowly, mouth moving in perfect sync, with my thoughts, not my words. And then it spoke aloud. "You never belonged out there." My lips didn't move, but the reflection grinned. "You thought the rules were for survival," it said. "They were instructions. They were teaching you what you'd become." I stepped back. The mirror rippled. The reflection stepped forward. It peeled itself from the glass, its features shifting subtly. Almost me, but not quite. Taller, eyes a little too dark, a little too hollow, a face built from my worst nights and forgotten guilt. "I'm your trade," it said. "No," I whispered. "Yes," it whispered back. "I've been waiting for someone to break. You did. The second bell was your choice. The third was your surrender." It raised its hand and pointed at me. "Tag." The world went white. And then I was outside the mirror, staring in. My face, my body, inside the glass, watching the new version of me, my replacement, walk away from the spiral room. It waved, then disappeared into the living, breathing circus. I slammed my fists against the glass, but the sound was eaten before it could echo. I screamed, but no air left my lungs. I cried, but the tears froze on my cheeks, drifting upward instead of down. The room pulsed once, then faded into a blur of shadows and shifting shapes. The last thing I saw was the reflection of another person, a new crew member, walking between tents, staring at a red and gold flyer pinned to a gate. The circus had sent its next invitation, and I was just part of the attraction now, a face in the mirror, waiting for someone else to break the rules. I don't know how long I've been here. Time doesn't work inside the mirror. I used to keep track by the shows, by the way the circus pulses with life when the sun goes down, by the screams of joy that bleed into terror just past midnight. But the longer I watched, the more the acts repeated, the more the people blurred. Now, I can't tell if it's been 8 days or 80 years. All I know is I watch. I see everything. The boy who cried blood near the candy stand, and no one noticed. The acrobat who climbs higher every night, even after her body hit the ground 2 weeks ago. The guests who wander into tents that didn't exist a moment ago and never come out. And always, always the new recruits, the crew, the desperate. They come with debts and sadness and loneliness. They come hungry for belonging, just like I did. They get their list of rules. They follow them. They break them. They think they're surviving. They're not. They're being shaped. Because the rules don't protect you from the circus. They prepare you for it. I've seen it happen over and over. One girl followed every rule perfectly. Never spoke out of turn. Never looked behind her when she heard the footsteps. She vanished on her 10th night. Swallowed whole by the striped tent during the 3:33 bell toll. Not because she failed, but because she passed. She was ready. Another guy broke every rule by the second night, mocked the performers, ate a glowing candied apple from the laughing jester. He lasted longer than most, laughed as his own shadow split from his feet and walked away. He didn't even notice when the rest of him dissolved into mist. That's the thing about this place. It doesn't punish mistakes. It consumes patterns. And when a new you takes your place, the circus keeps going like nothing ever happened. But tonight is different. I feel it. The music is slowing. The lights are dimmer. The carousel is spinning backward. The circus is closing. It happens once in a long while, when the land beneath it can't hold the weight of the rules anymore, when the spiral burns too wide and the mirror faces begin to bleed through. I feel the pressure building like a heartbeat behind the glass. And then, I see her, a girl, new, maybe 17, carrying a bucket of popcorn and wearing the crew badge upside down. She stops outside the mirror tent. She hears it, the crying. She turns toward the glass, and she sees me. For the first time in eternity, someone sees me. Her eyes widen. She drops the popcorn. Her lips move. "Who? Are you?" And the glass shatters. The mirror splits open with a sound like thunder collapsing in reverse, and air floods into my lungs. Real air. Cold. Sharp. Alive. I fall forward onto wet grass. I can feel gravity again. My chest aches with breath. My hands touch earth. I look up. She's still standing there, stunned. A crack runs along the center of her crew badge. Behind her, the circus flickers. The tents stutter in and out of form like glitching film. The carousel spins faster. The sky turns violet. The second bell rings, then the third, then a fourth. There was never a fourth. Performers scream, not in rage, not in hunger, but in fear. One of the trapeze artists falls and doesn't get back up. The fog thickens, black and hot and alive. The spiral opens, but this time it doesn't stop. I grab the girl's hand. "We have to go," I rasp. She doesn't fight me. We run, not toward the parking lot, because there is no parking lot now. Not toward the town, because the town is gone. We run toward the one place no one is ever supposed to go. The iron fence, the forbidden line. The sign still hangs there, rusted and swaying. Crew who pass this line are lost. But we already are, so we jump. The second our feet cross, the world shifts. The wind slams into us. The fog howls. The tents implode like lungs exhaling their last breath. And behind us, the circus collapses into itself, folding inward, smaller and smaller, until it's just a single red and gold flyer floating in the wind. It lands in the grass at the girl's feet. She picks it up with trembling hands. There's no address this time, only one sentence. "Thank you for watching." We don't speak for a long time. Eventually, we walk, toward lights that aren't flickering, toward sounds that don't repeat. I don't know if we're safe. I don't know if we're free. But the mirror is gone. And I'm not part of the show anymore. I was crew. I followed the rules. And somehow I made it out.